Hi guys, it's Ariana. Welcome back to my channel. So for tonight's video, we're going to be reading some more scary stories. As per usual, I always say I'm going to post more videos more frequently, and then I never do. So I'm not going to promise that I'm going to post as many videos as I possibly can in December, but I will try to be a little bit more frequent if you guys promise to help me with my views. My views on my last 10 videos have been absolutely super low, super down. I don't know what's going on with YouTube. It has just been over the last year, been a constant trickle down of them not promoting my videos. So it's kind of makes me not want to post videos because YouTube doesn't want to promote me. It's kind of discouraging. So if you guys could help me with my views, if you guys could like any of my videos you guys watch, if you guys could comment on any of the videos you watch, help with my engagement, that would really help me and my channel. So with all of that out of the way, let's jump into some spooky stories. This is from the True Scary Story section. It is from the Reddit author Deep-Independence-36, and they have a bunch of updates. So this is probably going to be one video just based on their stories, but they have really, really long stories. So let's jump into their true spooky stories. When I was a child, my late uncle's chilling ghost stories had a way of seeping into my young mind, filling it with vivid images of the supernatural. His stories were so convincing that as a kid, it was impossible not to believe the eerie possibilities that he presented. He really loved freaking out his little nieces and nephews. The centerpiece of many of my uncle's eerie narratives was my grandmother's old house. It was a relic from the past that stood a short distance up the road from the family cemetery. It had a history intertwined with the supernatural, making it the perfect setting for his stories. Several family members had passed away within its walls even, including my grandfather and her 2 infant daughters, who had met untimely deaths. My grandmother often spoke of beings that visited her at the foot of her bed. Their nature, a mystery, ghost or angel, no one could say for sure. Most of my family dismissed her accounts as hallucinations, but my mother and I believed her, and my uncle frequently brought her visions to life in story form. Among the many stories I remember him telling, there were 2 in particular that left an indelible mark on my imagination. The tale of a mysterious light that wandered through the cemetery at the witching hour, and a ghost that had visited multiple generations. Over the years, however, I had 3 paranormal experiences of my own, all focused around the same house, making me wonder if perhaps my uncle's tales had been more than just spooky stories. My very first encounter happened on a weekend when we were visiting my grandmother. I was just 7 or 8 years old at the time, and I was sitting in the living room floor playing with some toys. Sometime later, I looked at my mom and told her I had to go to the washroom. When I reached the bathroom door, something caught the corner of my eye that freaked me out. I saw an apparition so shockingly real that I froze in place. Descending the staircase just beyond the bathroom door was someone wearing a pair of old, light-colored brown pants, accompanied by heavy brown work boots. I couldn't see above the waist, and I knew no one was ever allowed to go up the stairs. These were not the entire of the living, but they were spectral, like something out of the 1920s or 1930s. My heart raced, and I struggled to process the impossible sight before me. The pants descended the stairs with an eerie, deliberate slowness that stopped. When panic surged through me, I slammed the bathroom door shut, and I frantically looked for a place to hide. My heart was pounding. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of the situation. Could it be my late grandfather who had passed away when my mother was just 9? I didn't have long to think about it before I noticed that the bathroom door wouldn't open. It had no lock, yet I found myself locked inside, desperately kicking and screaming for help. Minutes felt like hours as I fought to open the stubborn door, my cries for help going completely unheard. Strangely, the living room where my parents, grandmother, and aunt were gathered was just on the other side of the bathroom wall, but no one seemed to hear my frantic cries and screams. The door finally did open, and I bolted out of there, running back to the living room. I shut the hallway door with such force that it interrupted my family conversation. They looked at me puzzled by my sudden entrance. The freaky part is that no one had heard my screams or me pounding on the door. I never told anyone about my encounter, including my parents, because I didn't want to be thought of as some crazy person. So that was their first encounter in that house. That's really fucking creepy. I hate that so much. I hate that you were literally locked in a bathroom. That's so creepy. No, especially being that young, that is just really, really traumatizing too. I hate that for you. My aunt was a stubborn old woman who lived alone in the house and had become increasingly susceptible to falls. She resisted using her life alert device and seldom wore it around her neck. It was a daily source of worry for our family, and eventually, the day did come when her other two sisters could no longer ignore the need for intervention. They made the difficult decision to admit her into a nursing home, an act she strongly opposed. My mother and I had spent several nights with her before the dreaded decision was made, hoping to prevent the inevitable move of the nursing home. But despite our best efforts, it was too late. My aunt was placed in the care of the facility, leaving her home empty. With my mother already staying there, I decided to also move in with my aunt's permission, as I felt uneasy about my mom being alone in that house. A good friend of mine, ever helpful and eager to assist, joined me in the endeavor. To save money, my aunt graciously allowed us to use my grandmother's old house to store our belongings. It was a very nostalgic place, one filled with memories of my family's past. However, it also harbored a reputation of being haunted, a fact that had fueled countless ghost stories over the years. As my friend carried the first set of boxes into the house, she suddenly dropped them and ran back to where I was standing next to my truck. Her face was as pale as a ghost, and she was breathing very heavily, as though she had just sprinted a marathon. She stammered, "As soon as I entered through the back door into the hallway, I heard 3 loud knocks. It gave me the creeps." I raised an eyebrow, initially skeptical of her story. The house was old, and had always been a hub for ghostly tales. Still, something about the intensity in her eyes made me completely reconsider. The look on her face seemed genuine, and I couldn't ignore the shiver that ran down my spine. After all, the house with such a haunted reputation, anything was possible. We decided to proceed with the move with some caution. We continued to transfer our belongings into the house, but neither my mom nor I heard anything out of the ordinary. There was no mysterious knocks or unexplained sounds to be found. It was almost as if the ghosts, if they exist, were selective about their interactions. Over the following weeks, my cousin continued to visit, offering her support and company. She helped with chores around the house, like cutting the grass and weeding the garden. But one sunny afternoon, while I was preoccupied clearing some of the overgrown brush, I noticed her demeanor completely change. Her complexion paled once again, and her eyes darted nervously around the yard. I approached her and asked her what was wrong. She hesitated before finally confessing, "I keep feeling like I'm being watched. And when I look up at the second-story window, I keep seeing a face." My heart skipped a beat, and I felt a chill wash over me again. This wasn't the first time she had been unnerved by my house's presence. She seemed genuinely frightened and on edge. The apparition she described scared the crap out of her, making her feel profoundly uncomfortable and unwelcome. After that day, my friend's visit became increasingly infrequent. She no longer came over to hang out, and when we met, it was always at a neutral location or through phone calls. The experience she had in that house had left a mark on her, and the apparition that seemed to inhabit the old house had effectively driven her away. As the months passed, I never heard the strange knocks or witnessed any spectral faces myself, but the stories and encounters of those who had remained lingering in my memory. The house seemed to harbor secrets that were only known to a select few. A world of apparitions, an unexplained phenomenon that kept the family's imagination alive for generations. I couldn't help but wonder if the ghosts were the lingering spirits of my grandparents or other more scary entities. Whatever the truth may be, the haunting of Grandma's house still remains a mystery. And they have one more update. Summer break had arrived, and my children started preparing to spend the upcoming 2 weeks with their father. After breakfast at the old family house, I had one last chore for them to help with before their trip: to clean the 2 bedrooms upstairs in Grandma's old house. You should have seen the look on their faces. First, it was dread, suddenly turned into excitement. Since they were old enough to remember the ghost stories, it sparked their curiosity to see if any of them were true. That night at dinner, one of my children proposed an idea. "Why don't we take the camera upstairs and see if we can capture any ghosts?" He flashed a mischievous grin at me, the kind only a child can wear when proposing something both thrilling and terrifying. I pondered the suggestion for a moment. The idea of embarking on a paranormal adventure was enticing, but I couldn't help feel a shiver of unease. Nevertheless, I couldn't resist the lure of the unknown, and I finally gave in. That morning after breakfast, we made our way upstairs, camera in hand. However, there were no signs of otherworldly presence, no strange sounds, no eerie sightings, just the musty scent of time-worn wood and faded memories. That night, as we huddled together to watch the recorded footage, we were unprepared for what we would discover. The camera had captured something. In the midst of its recording, a small orb darted across the camera in a blur, as if it was desperately trying to evade the camera's lens. It moved with an otherworldly grace, flickering in and out of sight before vanishing entirely. We watched in astonishment, our hearts pounding, as the camera had somehow managed to capture its ethereal anomaly. But the strangeness didn't end there. In the corner of the bedroom, a transparent image began to materialize. It was a ghostly face, etched with the lines of age and wisdom. It was the face of an old woman, her features soft and hauntingly familiar. She seemed to gaze at us with eyes that held the weight of time. As we continued to watch, a chill settled over us. We awaited the final moments of the recording. In the exact spot where my youngest son had been standing, an apparition appeared. It was a baby, hovering above his left shoulder. Its translucent form exuded an otherworldly presence, a spectral reminder of life that had been cut tragically short. The significance of these hauntings, revelations began to dawn on us. The old family home, with its century-old history, had been witness to countless moments of joy and also sorrow. It had been the backdrop of stories of our ancestors, each one leaving an indelible mark on the house's very foundation. The family's history within these walls had been marked by numerous deaths spanning across all ages and generations. Among them was an unresolved tragedy of a baby's death nearly 50 years ago, a sorrow that had never truly found closure. As my children embarked on their visitation with their father, my cousin who lived next door to their old family home paid me a visit. He had experienced a profound loss just 2 years prior when his daughter tragically lost her life in a car accident. His eyes held a mixture of grief and wonder as he shared something as he discovered. He pulled out his laptop and showed me a video that his son had captured on his phone. It was an image that defied belief and left my heart heavy. The video showed his deceased daughter hovering over him from behind, her presence unmistakable. He explained that she had appeared only once, offering him a moment of solace and connection. As I listened to him, a chilling revelation washed over me. The old family house, standing as it had for over a century, had become a respiratory of souls, a place where the spirits of family members who had passed away over the years found refuge and perhaps even connection. Fast forward 1 year later, it was another hot summer. It was the middle of August, which here in the South is the hottest part of the year. I'd been talking with a friend for a while about repairs needing to be done to the downstairs hallway. The floor was rotting so bad that in some places your foot would go right through the floor. We needed to get it fixed right away. So her cousin came over to look at the house. I was at work when they came, but my mom was home to talk with them and go over everything that needed to be done. It was only minutes later that my friend's cousin ran out of the house and straight to their car. He claimed he was freezing and that he kept feeling like he was being watched. He was terrified and refused to ever come back. My friend said that as they were going down the road, her cousin kept insisting to turn the heater on. For miles, she said, she was absolutely frozen. The stories and encounters within this old house walls were not merely figments of our imagination or the product of superstition. They were echoes of the past that refused to fade away, whispers from another side that spoke to an endearing bond between the living and the departed. As I continued to care for the old family house, I couldn't help but feel a sense of reverence for the generations that had come before us. The house had become a bridge, a portal through which we could glimpse the lives and spirits of our ancestors. It was a place where the past and the present converged, where the lines between the living and the departed blurred, and where the legacy of our family continued to unfold in mysterious and pregnant ways. And that is their entire story. So that's all of their updates that I could find. Sorry, that one was quite long and it didn't really show too many scary things. Was more like just like an explaining of the house. I found the house was just really, really interesting. It wasn't super scary, but I can imagine that all of the people that actually did have those things happen to them, they were scared in the moment, but I didn't really find that story to be too scary. So I'm hoping you guys still enjoyed it. The next story that I'm gonna read is from the ghost story section. It is from the Reddit author Training-Anything 571, and it's titled, I Grew Up in a Haunted House. I grew up outside of the US in a large old 4-story house. While I never personally saw an apparition in the house, I did have some intense experiences and many other people did as well. One of the most common stories I was told involved a little girl who was frequently seen around the house. I've always believed in the paranormal, but since I lived there and never saw the little girl, I thought maybe people were just exaggerating. That is, until my dad told me this story. One night, he woke up in the middle of the night. My mom had gotten up to use the washroom and left the door slightly ajar, allowing a bit of light to spill into the room. As my dad turned over, something in the corner of the room caught his eye. Standing in the middle of the room was a little girl. She was dressed in a white nightgown, her face partially hidden by shadows, and at first, he thought it was me, as I was around 9 or 10 at this time. Then he remembered I wasn't even home that night. He said a chill ran through him, and not knowing what else to do, he simply turned over and pretended to go back to sleep. When my mom came back to bed, she didn't see anything out of the ordinary. That wasn't the last time someone mentioned seeing this little girl in the house, but it was one of the first moments that made me question if something or some things might actually be in our home. Out of curiosity, does anyone have any insight as to why so many people saw apparitions in my house, but neither my mom nor I ever did? That's really interesting. I don't actually know. That is really, really, really weird. I don't really understand, like I've said in other videos, how you guys can just turn over and go back to sleep. I would be shitting my pants, and there's absolutely no way I would be able to continue to sleep if I saw an apparition of a child. That's terrifying. They do have an update. For some context, here's the layout of my house. It was pretty large, about 4 stories tall. When you entered through the main entrance, you arrived to the second floor where one of the living rooms, the kitchen, and the dining rooms were located. The 2 bottom floors had another living room, an office, and at the lowest level, a garden and a pool. The top floor had the main bedrooms, a guest room, my room, and my parents' room, which was connected to a balcony. Once you reached the top of the stairs, there was a small living room. Directly across from the stairs was my parents' room, and in the corner was a glass door that led to the balcony. To the left of the living room, a small corridor led to my room and the guest room. One day, my parents were away, so my aunt and my grandmother stayed over for some days to keep me company. One night, we decided to go to a movie and didn't come back until around midnight. We were walking up the stairs, turning on the lights as we went, and my aunt in front of my grandmother behind her and me at the back. Just as we reached the top, my aunt suddenly froze. She stared down toward the balcony and whispered, "Someone's outside." We all turned to look at the stairway lights illuminating the living room and balcony door. She said she saw a figure standing on the balcony, through the glass door, and watched as it walked into my parents' bedroom. My grandmother and I didn't see anything, but the fear in my aunt's voice was enough to terrify us. We immediately called the neighbor's security guard to check the room. He went in and searched every corner of my parents' bedroom and the balcony, but of course, they didn't find anything. My aunt swears up and down that she saw a tall man, obscured by the darkness, standing on the balcony when she reached the top of the stairs. Then, he walked through the sliding doors into my parents' room. At first, we thought it must have been an attempted robbery, but after the security guard searched everywhere and found nothing, we started to question it. Our house was in a gated community with a security and camera, and they saw nothing. The balcony was about 3 stories up from the ground, and there was no easy way to climb up there. It would have been impossible for someone to escape without being seen. No windows or doors were open, and we never left the upper floor after we got home. Whoever or whatever my aunt saw had simply vanished. I still don't know what she saw that night, but maybe it was a trick of the light, or maybe it was something else. We all slept in the same bed that night, though. Yeah, I would too. That is terrifying. I hate the fact that you saw like a person. I know paranormal is usually more scary than like humans, but like people breaking into your house too is also fucking terrifying. So I hate that. So we're gonna read one more of their stories. They have a 3rd update. I grew up as an only child, and my parents often traveled out of town for work. I would stay with my nanny and usually invited my cousins over for sleepovers so it wouldn't get so lonely. At times, my parents would come back very late without telling me, assuming I'd be asleep. I always knew they were back because my mom would come into my room and check on me. And one night, my parents were away and my cousins were over. We started playing a game where one of us hid an object in the room, in this case, a piece of styrofoam behind the door, and the other 2 had to find it. We found it pretty easily since when we opened the door, the styrofoam squeaked. After some back and forth, we lost interest, chatted for a while, and eventually fell asleep, leaving the styrofoam behind the door. Later in the night, I woke up with my cousins needing to use the washroom. I couldn't fall back asleep, and some moments later, I heard the styrofoam squeak as the door opened. I kept my eyes closed, and after years of being caught playing by my Nintendo, late at night, I wasn't risking it, even when I wasn't doing anything wrong. The door opened slowly, but didn't swing all the way open. After a minute, it closed again. My cousin, also awake, peeked out and said it was my mom. Everything seemed normal, and I fell back asleep. In the morning, I walked past my parents' room and noticed that the door was open and the bed was made, which was unusual since they usually sleep in. I searched the house, and they weren't there. Assuming they had gone out, I called my mom. "Hey, where are you?" "Still at the hotel. We're about to leave." "You didn't come home last night?" "No, we were too tired to drive back." "Why?" I could hear the concern in her voice as she noticed my voice trembling. I explained that someone had opened the door during the night. At first, she thought it was the nanny, but told her my cousin had saw her. She hesitated before saying, "Actually, we did come back. I forgot, but we went to get something and then we went back to the hotel." She was completely lying, but I didn't want to worry her, so I just left it at that. After the call, I went back to ask the nanny if she had come to check on us at any point, and of course, she said no. When my cousin woke up, I asked her if she really had seen my mom open the door, and she said yes, that the hallway light was on, and she saw part of her face as she closed the door. I explained that my parents hadn't spent the night here. We all went silent for a moment. Something felt off in the house, and we didn't talk much about it after that and just tried to forget it. After that night, my cousin never spent the night at my house again. Yeah, I don't think I would spend the night at your house either. That is really fucking creepy. I am so happy I don't live in a haunted house, like knock on wood. I don't think I could handle it. You guys and your freaking stories, like I can't imagine dealing with this trauma on a daily basis. This is fucking terrifying. If something was to pop out at me in like the middle of my house and it was like a shadow person or an apparition or a child, like a ghostly apparition of a child, no, I think I would have a heart attack. That is freaking terrifying. So the first stories did mention a lot of death and infant deaths over the past generations, and that is really, really heartbreaking and really sad. It is very interesting that your family has all seen apparitions of your past history and past family and generations. That is very interesting. Your house is like a center point for all of you guys to connect, but still blur the line between the living and the deceased, and that is just freaking terrifying, but also really cool. I'm so sorry to hear about the generational passings of children. That is absolutely heartbreaking. And thank you so much for allowing me to share your stories. Your guys' stories were very, very, very long, which is really great. I like posting longer videos on my channel because you guys always want that. But I also like just your guys' personalized stories because they feel more personal than me reading fictional stories. Fictional stories do have a place and they are really good and they are really creepy. They're definitely more of the creepier side of YouTube. The personal ones are just a different level of creepy because you guys are saying this actually happened and it's just freaking terrifying. So this is where I'm going to end the video. We are at the 26-minute mark. So again, like I said, the first stories that I read weren't the scariest, but they were very interesting. So I did want to include them and you guys might actually find them terrifying. I don't know. I can imagine being in that moment. That was absolutely terrifying, but just like reading them the way that they were written, it was more just like explaining, hey, this happened. So I didn't find them to be overly scary, but still creepy enough for my channel. So if you guys made it to the end of the video, please leave me your favorite ghost emoji because we talked about a lot of apparitions in this video. And please like this video. If you guys haven't already subscribed, please feel free to subscribe and join my channel. And I will see you guys at the next video. Bye.